We just came back from a week in Yellowstone, so stay tuned for the latest news and a list of our 10 tips for visiting Yellowstone National Park. Welcome to Parks and Places Online. I'm Tom. In each of our videos, we share with you our personal experiences of our travels to national parks and places everywhere. If that interests you, then subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon to get notifications when new videos are uploaded. And giving a thumbs up helps us get this video out to others as well. Today we share 10 tips for visiting Yellowstone based on our latest trip. Tip number 1 is an extension of our last video, where we talked about how to find camping with the popularity of national parks in 2021. In that video, we shared our secret of taking advantage of National Forest Service campgrounds outside of the national parks. This option certainly will work in Yellowstone. When we exited, we left through the east entrance and we passed several national forest campgrounds that had plenty of availability. However, Yellowstone is a very large national park with most of the must-see sites in the interior along the Figure 8 road. So staying at a National Forest Service campground outside the park will mean that each day you'll have to do lots of driving into the park and then leaving the park to go back to your campsite. Also in my previous video, I mentioned recreation.gov as the website to use to make camping reservations. I'm not sure why, but Yellowstone has contracted out their camping, stores, and lodges to the company Xanterra. So to book a reservation for Yellowstone, you go to the Xanterra managed website, YellowstoneNationalParkLodges.com. But Xanterra has something that recreation.gov does not have, and that is a phone number. With the numerous campgrounds in Yellowstone and the extremely limited availability of camping, I suggest going old school and picking up the phone. You will be on hold for a long time. Just be patient. When the agent answered the phone, we asked for 7 consecutive nights, and we were 5 days out. And this was the week after the 4th of July. We didn't care where we stayed in the park, and we didn't care how many times we had to move. The agent was extremely helpful and helped us find 7 nights. We had 2 in Canyon, 2 in Grant, 1 in Madison, and 1 in Bridge Bay. So if you can't find availability online, then tip number 1 is to pick up the phone and be flexible on where you stay and how many times you relocate. Tip number 2 is on the best way to view Old Faithful. The first thing you want to do is stop at the visitor center and find out the next expected time of eruption. Then plan to find your viewing spot at least 15 minutes before that scheduled time. To find the best spot, look at the steam coming off the geyser to figure out which way the wind is blowing. You want to be in a position where the wind is blowing sideways. You don't want the wind blowing towards you or away from you, because then when it erupts, all you see is steam. You can also take a half-mile hike up the hillside to an observation point giving you an elevated view of Old Faithful. But in my opinion, the view from the ground level is better. Tip number 3. The Grand Prismatic Springs overlook. In 2016, the National Park built a new trail and observation platform to view Grand Prismatic Springs from above. If you thought the view of Grand Prismatic Springs from the ground was stunning, then you must take this short hike to get to the elevated view to see an absolutely gorgeous sight. Getting to the spring is not intuitive. Here is the spring, and here is the overlook. Up here is the parking lot to Midway Geyser Basin with the boardwalks to view Grand Prismatic Springs from ground level. You have to drive a mile south and park at the Fairy Falls trailhead to take the trail to the overlook which is 1.2 miles there and back. You can continue the hike to Fairy Falls, but Fairy Falls is not one of my favorite waterfalls in the park, which leads me to tip number 4. Go to Moose Falls. This waterfall is on the southern border of Yellowstone, so if the Grand Tetons National Park is also part of your vacation, which I recommend, then you'll be driving right past this waterfall. This is a really beautiful waterfall, which relatively few people stop to see, probably because it's on the road where people are just racing to get to their next destination. The trail to the bottom of the falls is only about a block long, but it is steep, so take your time and you'll do fine. Tip number 5. Sadly, I must remove West Thumb Geyser Basin on my list of must-see locations in Yellowstone. In my previous video on Yellowstone, I listed West Thumb Geyser Basin as a must-see location in the park. But geothermal activity changes all the time, and over the past several years, West Thumb Geyser Basin has significantly dried up. Hot water from the springs used to overflow the pools and run downhill across the land to the lake. The different heat-loving bacteria would create beautiful orange and brown colors in the water. Well, the water levels have dropped and the pools don't overflow. So the once colorful landscape is now basically white with grasses and trees growing. Black Pool and Abyss Pool are still there, as well as other nice features, but in general, West Thumb Geyser Basin is not as beautiful as it was and gets removed from my list of must-see places. For tip number 6, we go to the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. Visiting the canyon with its upper falls and lower falls is a must-see. You get beautiful views along the viewpoints along the north and south rims of the canyon. But a majestic view of the lower falls can be seen by taking the Uncle Tom's Trail on the south side of the canyon. Unfortunately, that trail is closed. Not to worry, there is a second, lesser-known trail that takes you to an equally stunning view of the lower falls from the north side of the canyon. This is the Red Rock Point Trail. What? You've never heard of it? You can't find it on the park map? Well, you're right, it isn't on the park map. You catch the trail that goes to Red Rock Point from Lookout Point. As you walk out to Lookout Point, there is an unmarked trail that goes off to the right. There's no sign, there's no indication that it's the trail that goes to Red Rock Point. But it's a regular trail, well maintained, with wooden stairs that get you down to the final viewing platform. The trail is shown on this brochure of the canyon area. The date on this is 1998. This brochure is so old that the one-way road along the north rim of the canyon is in the wrong direction. So, sometime since 1998, they reversed the direction of the one-way road. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. For tip number 7, we head to Hayden Valley. This is the area of the park between the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone and Yellowstone Lake. The Yellowstone River flows through Hayden Valley, leaving the lake and heading to the canyon. All along this drive are rolling hills and great opportunities to see birds in the water, elk, and bison. Tip number 8 is on spotting wildlife. If you're like most people visiting Yellowstone during the summer months, then the best time to view wildlife is in the early morning or in the later evening. We don't have the discipline to get up early in the morning to view wildlife, so we do most of our wildlife viewing in the evening. There are 2 strategies for viewing wildlife. One is to find a good spot and to camp out. The other is to be an opportunist and drive around and see what comes across your path. We tend to be the ones that drive around. We have seen bear along this drive, and we've talked to people that have seen wolves, although we haven't seen wolves. Tip number 9. The popularity and crowds in Yellowstone are certain, but they are not unavoidable. There are definitely places in Yellowstone that you can pull off the road and find a shady spot with not many people around. The Fountain Flat picnic area is a great place to pull out a lawn chair and put your feet in the refreshing Firehole River. South of the Mud Volcano area are 3 picnic areas. The picnic area along the river is a great place to just find a shady spot and relax away from the crowds. Gull Point Drive along the Yellowstone River is another nice place to get away. There are many places and I can't possibly list them all, but know that they're out there, so seek them out. Tip number 10, also related to the crowds and popularity of Yellowstone. It's good to understand that certain places are popular and expected to be hard to get into some. Some places, like Old Faithful, are well equipped to handle enormous crowds. Although Old Faithful is the most popular place in the park, they have an enormous parking lot that usually handles the number of people coming there. On the other hand, Grand Prismatic Springs and Midway Geyser Basin has exploded in popularity, and the parking lot there is horribly inadequate, which leads to horrible traffic jams of people on the highway trying to pull into the parking lot that's already full. Fairy Falls used to not be that popular, but now that it's the trailhead to the Grand Prismatic Springs overlook, that parking lot too is now overflowing. The old rule used to be arrive before 9 a.m. or after 4 p.m. to avoid the crowds. The new rule is to arrive earlier or later. We arrived at the Fairy Falls parking lot before 8 a.m. and it was nearly full, so make your plans accordingly. I hope you liked this video. Again, if you did, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.